Good morning and welcome to Sacred Enzyme. I'm Stacy. I hope you're doing well today. So I have a couple of different things that I want to talk about today, but one of the things I want to talk about first is I want to rewind us back to when we had the Younger Dryas. And I started to do this video yesterday. I got halfway through it and everything just shut down. So I was like, well, okay, we'll try it again tomorrow. So after the Younger Dryas, which was between 12,900 years ago and 11,700 years ago, we had a huge catastrophe on the planet. And everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. We had major climate shifts. We had ice. We had high latitude regions that were unstable. People had to leave. Landscapes were flooded. We had things buried. It was a big mess. Humans were living farther north at the time, at the North Pole. I've talked about this before. Farther north than today because it used to be warmer. It was warm in the North Pole. It wasn't cold like it is today. So what I started to discover is when I started going back and looking at this pattern with the ley lines and everything, I started discovering that all of these people that were survivors of the Younger Dryas, what they did was they all migrated in between the 30-degree and the 60-degree latitude bands. Okay, and the reason that I say this is because I have supporting evidence. Okay, so the 30-degree to 60-degree latitude bands became the first reliably habitable zones. They had fresh water from the glacial melt. Of course, they had new soils because everything had been just turned over, right? They had strong seasons now, forests, grasslands, and they were following the game. So these bands formed continuous corridors around the planet. So populations were compressing into these areas. And so this could explain the reason why we ended up with major invading and wars and things at this time, because it was a squeeze, right? We had all these people being squeezed into a small area, small band. So let's talk about starting over. Okay, can you imagine what it must have been like for a total world reset, where we went from literally like what we are now to banging rocks together, guys? Seriously, let's put our mind in this space. Okay, there was no infrastructure, nothing. No metallurgy systems, no written knowledge chains, no complex tools. People would return to the lowest common denominators here. It would be stone, wood, bone, fire, and observation, guys. It wasn't a loss of intelligence. It was a loss of everything that had to do with our structure, our infrastructure. So let's think about this logically. If this happened and we were back to beating stones together, literally, because we had nothing. Everything was buried and destroyed. What would the first step be after that? Well, native copper. Guys, native copper. You don't have to smelt native copper. You don't have to do anything but hammer it with stone and make tools. So if you're rebuilding from stone tools, you can't immediately smelt metal because you've got to have kilns, fuel management, temperature control, specialized labor. And you got to have some type of settlement. You got to build it. But native copper is different because it occurs naturally in pure metallic form, can be cold hammered with stone tools. It bends instead of shattering, right? And it can be reshaped repeatedly. This is copper. And also it's a conductor, guys. It's a conductor. So if people were looking for anything better than stone, it would have been native copper. It would have been the obvious step. So native copper is rare, but where it exists, we see early copper use without smelting. Stone tools are still dominant. Long overlap between stone and copper. So it took a while for them to organize themselves to find these natural copper deposits and then mine them. Gradual experimentation, not industrialization. So this explains why the Great Lakes, Anatolia, the Balkans, Iran, Cyprus, and the Andes all show early copper use independently within the same broad post, the Younger Dryas time frame, guys. It wasn't because of a global culture, but it was the same problem. It met the same geological opportunity. So now let's go to these petroglyphs, because I ended up getting this book at the library yesterday. After I started researching this stuff, I had to go return my Florida place names book. And I walked into the used book section and I found this book about making toroidal fields. This right here is a toroidal field. This person is showing a flute, which is like a toroidal field, and then many of the other ones inside, they have a erect phallus. See this? This is toroidal fields, guys. They're saying that you have to be in harmony, basically. That we are the instruments. We are the instruments. That we tune the planet. So I started looking at these petroglyphs because the number of concentric rings denotes a certain thing. Everything is sacred geometry, guys. So around these copper zones in the same 30 to 60 degree latitude corridors, we will consistently find these cup marks, cup and ring marks, single spirals, multi-ring spirals, interlocking spirals, and linear grooves in connectors. You'll see it everywhere in these areas. So these symbols are not emphasizing ownership or extraction, obviously. They're emphasizing time cycles, guys, movement and return. It appears in corridors and not just in resource centers. In this model, petroglyphs function as memory tools for people who are moving through newly reorganized landscapes. They're helping to encode the seasonal awareness, because after this happened, obviously, they were being pretty aware of what was going on in the skies, right? They were looking for the return paths that were coming. They were looking for cycles of stability, truthfully, and they were all sharing an understanding of time. So, lost advanced civilizations, high technology, and hidden global empires, I'm not speculating that in this. I'm talking about climate disruption, human adaptability, geological variations, and counting time. We don't restart at zero. We restart at pattern recognition, guys, okay? It's everywhere. It's in the symbols. It's in the buildings. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Patterns, rings, spirals, cycles are rediscovered because nature keeps teaching them, guys. If you get kicked in the teeth enough, you learn. Okay, so we could summarize it like this. After the Younger Dryas, populations from high northern latitudes redistributed into mid-latitudes between the 30 and 60 degree lines, where climate was first stabilized. In these regions, people rebuilt from stone tools. They experimented with native copper, where it was naturally available, and they marked the landscapes with petroglyphs, emphasizing cycles, movement, and return. And these patterns reflect human adaptation to environmental resets. So I'm going to show you where I found so many of these petroglyphs and how they actually are between the 30 and the 60 degree longitudinal line. And I'm going to mark this as the safe zone when we have climate upheaval on the planet. When we have a reset, this is the safe band, guys. And you can look at it throughout the whole middle of the planet, that it goes right through like this. This was the band. This was the safe band. This was the safe zone. So we've got Scotland, Spain, Italy, Sweden. These are famous spirals, labyrinths, cup and ring marks, all kind of drawings. In North America, between the 30 and 60 degree, we've got Petroglyph National Monument in Albuquerque. We got Newspaper Rock, Jefferson's Petroglyphs in Minnesota, Writing on Stone in Alberta, Canada. These are all in the line. Now, the Writing on Stone in Alberta, their Major Plains Rock Art Landscape section, is on the 111 degree longitudinal line, guys. That is a super important spot. In the Southern Hemisphere, we've got Patagonia. They got Hueva de los Manos. This is a world-class early rock art tradition. So this is like a rock art belt. This is where they started making all of this rock art after we had this major world upset. What were these guys trying to say? So I feel like that this really is indicating a lot here, because native copper is a shortcut metal. And it's also the metal of Venus. And so I think that it's really interesting to say that this 30 to 60 degree longitudinal line on our map is something that we really need to zero in on, because this is a lot of clues here. So we can ask a useful question is, what job might this symbol be doing in this landscape, right? We've got 4 reoccurring functions. We've got 5 pattern rings. This is the pentagonal rhythm, repeated spiral returns. Why? Because Venus repeats its synodic cycle every 8 years, tracing a 5-pointed pattern. Guys, they were looking for Venus to come back. 5-fold logic return patterns are in Ireland at the latitude 53.7 and longitude 6.5 west. In New Grange, Ireland, 53.7, 6.5 degrees west. Campo Limero Glacier, Spain, latitude 42.54, longitude 8.53. Atlantic rock sites in Brittany, France. That's like some of the oldest paintings in the world, right? Latitude 47.8, longitude 2.9. They're all in the 30 to 60 degree. They're all making markers for Venus's return. And then you have some that are 8 and 9 ring spirals. These are marking emergence, thresholds, and completion cycles, guys. Finnmark in Norway, Alta Rock Art, latitude 69.9, longitude 23.3. The Scandinavian interior spiral sites, latitude 60 to 65 degree north, longitude 10 to 25 east, 10 to 25 degree east. And then the Andean highland spiral sites, and these are in Peru and Bolivia, latitude 10 to 20 degrees south and longitude 70 to 75 degrees west. And it's interesting that these 8 to 9 ring spiral patterns are kind of on the fringes of these 30 to 60 degree areas, showing completion patterns. And in the middle, we're talking about Venus return, guys. Super interesting stuff to think about. So cup marks, cups and rings, target symbols, and location anchors are in Argyll, Scotland, Minnesota, New Mexico, and Alberta. We also have Trinity integration markers, which are these 3 sets of rings hooked together like this, and like this. I know everybody's seen them. These 3-fold spiral interlocking rings are integration without hierarchy. New Grange triple spiral chamber in Ireland, Atlantic Europe, Triskel regions in Ireland, Brittany, and Britain. Central European Latine regions. Now this is super important because Latine is the name of this original Gokturkic groups as they were coming, and they were blended in with German tribes and all these other groups. They believed in the sky god, the Tengri, and this was a bird being, or Tengu, and it's in the in that movie Ronin 47. So we've got naturally occurring natural copper locations throughout the world, and the first and one of the most important ones is Isle of Royale in Michigan, Lake Superior, 48 latitude, longitude 88.7. Keweenaw Peninsula in Michigan, Anatolia, Turkey. There are early Andean native copper zones in Peru. And then we have the early copper mining transition. We have native copper plus early ore extraction. So this is as we're getting further along. We've got Serbia, Bulgaria, Cyprus, and the Iranian Plateau. So these places are super interesting because if you go back and look at these places where this natural copper occurred, you're going to find that these are the earliest archaeology sites that they're discovering right now. Anatolia, Turkey. Look at the stuff that they're finding in the Great Lakes. I mean, come on, guys. They found a stone circle in the Great Lakes. That's not a mistake, guys. They're marking spots. This is where everything started over. So we've got a post-Younger Dryas stability zone in between the 30 and 60 degree longitudinal lines. There's a lot of natural copper smelting and a lot of these petroglyphs. So if people are looking for the earliest sites that were inhabited after this cataclysm, that's where we got to look, guys. That's where it is. That's where it is. So after the Younger Dryas, human populations from higher latitudes redistributed into the 30 to 60 degree latitude corridors where climate was first stabilized. In these regions, people rebuilt from nothing. Stones, banging rocks together. Then it went to naturally occurring copper that didn't require smelting. And this marked landscapes with petroglyphs serving different functions, including cycle tracking, place anchoring, and integration symbolism, guys. They were telling us right here, and Cocopele, that we are the reverberation. We are the harmonics tuners. We tune the harmonics with our bodies, making music, creating life, sacred reproduction. Reproduction wasn't fun and games. It was sacred. It was a sacred act. Sex was a sacred act. It wasn't just something you did for fun. They were tracking the cycles. Everything was very serious and important back then. So with that, when you come and find me, I'll be here. We're living past, present, and the future all at the same time. Love to hear what you have to say about that. I think it's really interesting. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to videos. This is a for nonprofit channel. We share all this information freely, without gatekeeping, without subscriptions, without memberships. Well, and obviously you need to subscribe to the channel, but it don't cost you anything. You don't have to take no classes, pay for no courses, or book any appointments. You just come here and watch, and everything's here. So, I'd love to hear what you have to say, and I'll catch you in the comments. Thanks for watching Sacred Enzyme. Bye-bye.